All right, let's see if we have audio. So whoever comes on here first, could you tell me if you can hear me? Can you hear me? Nicholas, anybody? Oh, we have sound again. Okay. So it looks like rebooting worked. Hey, Thomas, first day on Periscope. All right, success. I'll wait for some of the rest of you to pile back in here before I continue. Should be a moment. So I'm not sure how much you heard of my last point, but I was saying that the administration should focus or even create a fund of just the technology startups who are, or even larger companies, who are working on specifically reducing the cost of healthcare. One of the companies that could be involved in that would be my own. So I'm far from uninterested in this. And if you don't know the interface by WhenHub app that my startup makes, let me change the lighting on this so you can see it. Allows you to be an expert or call an expert for an immediate online or scheduled video call, and that could include healthcare professionals. So we're adding doctors to it, et cetera. So one of the things that the administration could do is to say that we're going to experiment with, so let's say, a low-cost insurance plan that includes maybe some catastrophic insurance for the big stuff, and then maybe direct payment for doctors or use of apps, or some other newer innovative processes for the low end. So we can experiment with that. All right. The other news I'm seeing is that the Betsy DeVos has cut the funding for Special Olympics from the education budget. Now, that's not a good look. If you're President Trump, it's not a good look at all. But here's the first thing that I said when I saw that. I saw that the Special Olympics was taken out of the education budget. What was your first thought about that? My first thought about that was, why are the Special Olympics in the education budget? And why is the federal government paying for Special Olympics? I'm not against Special Olympics, but why is the government paying for it? I mean, I don't really, I get that people like it. I get that it has benefits. I'm not saying it's a waste of money. I'm just saying, why is the government paying for it? And why would it be in the education budget? So when you think of it that way, they teach us compassion. Again, I'm not saying there are no benefits. The government could fund all kinds of different things that would also have benefits, but it wouldn't be the mission of the federal government. So, I guess there's federal funding as well. So I gotta say, I've never quite understood Special Olympics. Well, I don't want to go any further because I'll get painted with some bad brush. I just don't know that that's where the money should be going. Let me be more specific. If you had a special needs child and the government said to you, hey, we want to help you with your special needs child and we have X dollars to do it, would you want the government to put that limited money into the Special Olympics, or would you prefer that the government gave you, let's say, a tax break so that you could get maybe some professional help that you wouldn't otherwise have for your special needs kid? Which would you prefer? I mean, Special Olympics makes people happy, and I'm not doubting the benefits. But if you have limited money, which is the real world, is the Special Olympics where the parent of a special needs child would want that money to go compared to the alternatives? Just a question. Um, let's talk about Venezuela. Apparently, Russia is moving in assets and military assets to Venezuela, which should be worrisome. And my first thought about that, when I saw that the Russian military was sending heavy military equipment to Venezuela, I thought, what would be the blowback if we just bombed the shit out of it? Now, I'm not suggesting we do that. I'm just asking the question. If if we just said we're not going to tolerate Russian military assets and advisors, or even troops, apparently there are troops in this continent, the South American, North American continent. If we just said, "Hey, here's the deal, Russia. We'll give you a week to get rid of your shit. You got a week to get rid of it. In a week, it's going to be gone either way. So you could either put it on a boat and take it home, or you can watch it, go up in a fireball." And I'm wondering what exactly would be the blowback? Yeah, Monroe Doctrine, somebody saying exactly. Um, wouldn't we be able to get away with that clean? And wouldn't it be a fairly unambiguous message that says, stay out of our hemisphere, stay out of this part of the world? I'm not sure there would be any. Somebody says there's a nuclear risk. I think that's zero. Because how much does Russia really care about Venezuela? Apparently, they care about their investments. So it's a financial decision for Russia. But the other fun part about it is it's kind of smart for Russia to create a bargaining chip. Because if we start telling Russia that they need to get out of Venezuela, because that's our part of the world, what does Russia say? If we say to Russia, you have to get out of Venezuela because this is our part of the world, or any version of that, Russia's going to say, get out of my part of the world. So it's kind of a clever play. But I heard Philip Mudd on CNN, I haven't heard what Philip Mudd says yet about the Russia collusion hoax, but he was talking about Russian assets moving into Venezuela. And on this topic, I will take his expert advice. And one of the things he says is something that we forget, that Russia is a very weak country, that they barely have their economy is not strong, their military is kind of small. We kind of imagine them still being like the Soviet Union, more of a serious problem. Um, and that one of the things we could do with Venezuela is just ignore it because it just doesn't matter. And we could just ignore it. So one thing is just a question, could we just bomb their assets and make a point about don't put them here again, because if you try it again, we'll just bomb them again. But we can also just sort of ignore it because Venezuela will do whatever Venezuela does. It's not like we're going to send in the military, so their weapons shouldn't make any difference anyway. As long as we're not, we have no serious reason to think we're going to move the military against Venezuela, it doesn't matter. It's just Russia wasting some more money. All right. In the news, apparently Greenland the glaciers are increasing, not decreasing, which would be the opposite of what you would expect. It's the opposite of what you would expect with climate change. You would expect their glaciers to be shrinking. Now, I tweeted that around because it was funny. It was just funny that news came out the same time Trump was having his best week ever. But don't make too much of it. It doesn't it doesn't mean anything that there's one area of the world that's getting either warmer or colder. There's nobody on the climate science side of things who makes any claim that there's any one place on the earth that's telling you much. So it is within the theory that it could get warmer in places while it's getting colder in other places because the whole weather patterns are changing because of the disruption. So don't celebrate anything about the Greenland glaciers. It is not, it neither confirms nor debunks climate change. It's just a data point. It doesn't mean too much. All right, I got a question for you. As you know, I think half or more of all your phone calls lately are scam phone calls. For me, it's closer to 95%. I would say 95% of all my phone calls are, just spam and scams. Now, you probably have the same situation. Do you leave your ringer on? because I turn my notifications and my ringer off, and I just leave it off all the time. And it's sort of an experiment because I have to actually pick up my phone and consciously look to see if I have a message. And sometimes it might be an hour or two, and I haven't checked any messages. And here's the thing. If you leave your notifications on during the day, then you're being managed by other people. Other people are deciding what you think about and what you do and what you care about. So checking your email on a regular basis or even keeping your notifications on turns you into a slave. That turns you into a slave. So what I've been experimenting with is how many problems are caused by not checking my phone. And I'll give you an example. So, and definitely there are problems. So yesterday I was on my way to an interview, and I was for Greg Gutfeld's podcast, and I got there like sort of right on time, or maybe 2 minutes after the early time I was supposed to be there. So I was way on time, very much on time, but I hadn't checked in, getting close to the time I was supposed to be there, which was way ahead of the time I needed to be there. And so the producer had been texting me because she was worried, and it makes a really big deal, right? If you're the producer and you don't know if your talent is heading to the location, you're pretty worried, and you don't know if you need a backup plan or what you're going to do. But it didn't affect me. So here's the selfish part of it. It didn't affect me. I just went to the interview, did the interview, drove home, had no effect. But it definitely affected someone else. So how much of not doing what other people want are you willing to accept in your life in order to have the peace of not being interrupted by your phone? And I've decided that I will be inconvenient to other people for my own benefit. And I wonder if how many of you are making a similar decision, which is, yeah, it would be great for other people if I had my notifications on and got back to them right away. That would be excellent for other people. It would be just bad, terrible, like really bad for me. Now, let me offer a suggestion. If you are a producer or any kind of an organizer and you depend on people to show up at an event, whether you're a TV producer or you're a wedding planner, a wedding planner really needs to know when people are showing up, right? I mean, that's pretty important. Or you're an event person and you're waiting for your speaker to show up, etc. May I suggest an app which my startup made? It's called Approach. And it would allow you to send in a text, and then you could track on a map just for a short time. It times out. That's the key, so you're not tracking people all the time. It allows you to track multiple people coming to a destination. So if you were, let's say, a wedding planner, and you need to know if the flower and the music and the bride and everybody are going to show up on time, you could just send them all one text through the app. You could send it out by email or text or social media. And then anybody who accepted would show up on your map just like an Uber app. You could see where they're going. You could see how far they are away. So this is one substitute for having your notifications on. You don't have to wait for people to call you because you can just see they're on the way, and that's all you need to know. All right, that's one of my company's apps. The other is Interface by WhenHub, and I hope you check that one out. All right, now, have you ever heard this saying, and I think I'm paraphrasing it, it's something like this: the greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing the world he doesn't exist. Have you ever heard that? I don't know who said it first. But I'm seeing something like that with the media, because the anti-Trump media has actually gotten away with creating this image of Trump that scares people to death, like he's all the problem. Like the problem is what Trump does. It's not a problem of the way they report it. And they've actually convinced most of the country that the problem is Trump and not the way they report it. For example, with this Special Olympics thing, I hear that people are already sending around the video of Trump when he allegedly, he didn't actually do this, but allegedly mocked Serge, whatever his name is, the reporter who had a bad arm. Bad arm meaning some genetic condition where his arm was not fully functional. Now, you've all seen the video, and I'm not going to do an impression of it, but let's say that Trump used hand motions that people said looked like he was mocking a guy with a bad arm. Now, if you are consuming only the media on the left, that's all you saw. You saw Trump apparently mocking a guy with a bad arm. And if that's all you saw, you believed it. So Trump is a bad person. That's the conclusion. But if you consume the media on the right, or the social media on the right, you've probably seen many times videos of Trump talking about completely other people with identical hand motions. And the funniest part is that one of them was Ted Cruz. So I have a clip that I'll probably release if this becomes another story, if it rises to the national attention again. I'll start tweeting around the clip of Ted Cruz, of President Trump mocking Ted Cruz with identical or close enough to identical hand motions. And I believe there's even a compilation clip of him using the same motions in a number of different speeches, referring to different people every time. So take that example. What is one of the most problematic things that anti-Trumpers believe? They believe that Trump mocked a disabled guy in public. But that never happened. It literally didn't happen. And it's easy to prove. You just look at the video of him doing the same thing with other people and you go, oh, okay, that's what he does. So, so who's the devil? Is it the devil, the person who made this false story, or the person they're talking about? So with this Russia collusion stuff, the story is now, at least people are waking up to the story that it's the way the media treats it. It's not really the subject of the story that's the one who's doing the bad stuff, at least in every case. All right, here's an interesting question. Let's say, this is a thought experiment, so you don't need to disagree with it. So this is, if climate change is a dire, catastrophic problem, as the Green New Deal suggests, and as climate scientists by a majority suggest, and the climate models suggest, if that's all true, and we're heading toward doom with climate change, who would you blame? Well, at this point, I would blame whoever was behind, at least partly, not totally, but I would put some of that blame, if we were to progress toward doom with the climate, I would put some of that blame on the media, because the media just served up one of the biggest hoaxes of all time and got caught, the Russia conspiracy hoax. And if you put one, pants on fire, hair on fire too, hoax on television, and you run it for 2 years, and then you say, whoops, I guess all of that was wrong. Literally everything the experts told you was wrong. Keyword experts, because there were experts in, let's say, John Brennan. Who is a bigger expert on this intelligence stuff than John Brennan? He was the head of the CIA. Totally wrong. Who were the experts reporting things? Well, there were reporters who are experts at reporting things. Totally wrong. And now, let's say that story, goes away, and then you start a new story, which is that climate change is going to kill us all, and it's probably Trump's fault. If you just went through 2.5 years of Trump-Russia collusion, and it's all Trump's fault, and then none of it was true, and then the very next thing you hear is climate change is a giant problem, and it's all Trump's fault for not acting on it, are you going to believe it? It gets harder to believe. Now, here's the thing. What if they're right? Right? What if climate change is a problem? And what if we don't at least address it within 12 years aggressively? What if we don't address it because people didn't believe it? Why is it they wouldn't believe it? Well, it's not because they're anti-science. That part is ridiculous. There's nobody who's anti-science, by the way. The idea that anybody is anti-science is ridiculous. Have you ever met anybody who's anti-science? That's not a thing. So I think the Russia hoaxers have to take some responsibility, as well as the media that was behind it, for anything in the future that the public doesn't believe. Right? They got to take a little credit for that because the public's been duped. All right. So I'm watching people changing the topic, prepare attacks on Joe Biden. And one of the attacks that you'll see a million times is if he gets close to the nomination or gets the nomination, is the compilation clip of him doing things that look creepy with young girls. It's usually in the context of some public photo opportunity, and there are a bunch of people, and he's getting hands-on and kissing the girl, and she doesn't like it. And I didn't realize how many there are, but apparently there may be like 10, something like 10 video clips of him touching little girls in ways that make you feel really uncomfortable. Now, I'm not going to make any claim that there's any more to it than exactly what we see on the video. So I don't make any claim beyond that, just that what we see makes us feel uncomfortable. But when you watch it, you say to yourself, okay, here's someone who could never get elected. I mean, this compilation clip should completely take him off the page. But here's why it won't. The people on the left are never going to see it. The people who might vote for him will never see it. You're going to see it, the people watching this. I'll bet you'll see it maybe, I don't know, 100 times. Assuming he got the nomination. You would probably see that clip 100 times on social media. And people who would vote for him will see it 0 times because we're so siloed at this point. So I'm not sure it makes any difference. If the only people who are going to see it wouldn't have voted for him anyway. I'm going to get rid of all caps shouting person who's yelling at me. All right. And then the other thing that Joe Biden, if you said to yourself, what is Joe Biden most known for? Because people are simple and they don't look at somebody as, vast 30 plus years of public service and pick out all the good stuff. They tend to remember a few key things. Now, what are a few key things you remember about Biden's history? Well, you remember Anita Hill, right? So if you just go to your top of mind for Joe Biden, and you've been around a while, this would be older voters only, they remember him pushing what many people thought was too hard, and I think he even admits was too hard, against Anita Hill, who not only was a woman, she was African American, and she was credibly accusing Judge Thomas of sexual harassment. And I don't know that reputation can fly anymore. Now, what will protect Biden is that anybody under a certain age didn't live through it, and they're not going to pay attention to it because they don't pay attention to negative stuff about their own candidate. So that too might make no difference at all. It just might make no difference that he has that because people just won't pay attention. All right. I think I talked about all my topics. Oh, I tweeted that Adam Schiff, who says that he still believes there's plenty of collusion. Adam Schiff, he is not being fooled by being this Mueller completely clearing the president. He still believes there's plenty of collusion there. And every time I see it now, it looks different. It looks like the story of the the Japanese World War II soldier who hid in a cave for 28 years in Guam. And when they found him, he didn't know that the war had ended 28 years ago. He was just hiding out until it was over. And I just reminded of that. He just seems like that. He should be in a cave in Guam. People are asking me to comment on Mike Lee's funny Senate speech. I turned on the clip and I watched for roughly a minute and I got bored and turned it off. So I don't know, if you have a lot of time, maybe you want to watch it, but it just bored me. So I don't think I just didn't know where it was going. So I got bored and turned it off. All right. Swalwell believes the dossier is true. Does he? I don't think you can assume that anybody talking about this topic believes what they say. There was a point where you could have believed that. There was a point before the Mueller report summary came out that you could have said, well, I think they actually believe this. Or maybe it's wishful thinking, but they think something's coming. But now when you hear them talk, you can't give them the benefit of a doubt anymore. Now it's just lying. Oh yeah, I saw a story that Barbara Bush blames Trump for her heart issues because she got too much angst about how he treated Jeb. And I think, oh, what a cheap story. That is such a cheap story. Yes, I see your clever puns about Swalwell's name. De Blasio is doing the Fine People hoax. All right, so here's a little update on the Fine People hoax. So you've seen how much energy and I guess attention I got for the Fine People hoax and debunking it. And it seems that instead of just saying, oh, we were really wrong about that, people have changed their defense of the Fine People quote. And now it's changed to, well, if you were in the same zip code as the neo-Nazis, even if you were there for different purposes, such as supporting free speech, which is very different from being a Nazi. Supporting free speech, being a neo-Nazi, different, right? And so the idea is that there is no way you could be in that same general area unless you were supporting the neo-Nazis and you were in fact a bad person. And I think to myself, that's just messed up. The most common thing in the world is that people are in the same geography for different reasons. The most common thing in the world. And to imagine that this is the one time where people had to be on the same side in order to stand in the same zip code is completely nonsense. And there's a little bit of a desperation to turn, well, okay, he wasn't talking about the Nazis being fine people, but what about the people who were in the same general area? You can't free them from any blame because if you were in, and I'm not going to tell you who said this, but a prominent person yesterday asked me privately, how could I explain, the people who were there who claimed not to be the neo-Nazis, but were anti-statue? How can you explain specifically that when they showed up and they saw that there was this giant neo-Nazi march, why didn't they immediately leave? And it was presented to me that the person said that they would immediately leave. And I thought to myself, if I showed up at an event that I didn't know was going to be a neo-Nazi event, and suddenly I see all the Nazis marching and I see Antifa with their hoods and clubs and stuff, I'm not leaving. Seriously? I'm not going to leave that. Are you kidding me? If there's anything I'm going to stay and watch, it's that. There's no frickin' way I'm going to leave that situation. And it's not that I'm proud of it. And I'm not taking sides. I'm saying if there's an event of that magnitude, Yeah, I'd be filming it. Or at the very least, I'm going to hang around to see if anybody needs any medical care. Like, wouldn't you at least hang around to see if you could be useful should things go wrong? And so to imagine that if you showed up for a different reason and you saw the neo-Nazis, that the only explanation is that you're with them or you would have left is ridiculous. I don't know any one of you who would have left. You would have stayed a little while. Sure, maybe you don't stay till midnight, but you would have stayed a little while just to find out what's going on. If I see any kind of a you I don't know, anything of that magnitude, it doesn't matter what it is, I'm going to stop and watch it. All right? Doesn't mean I approve of it. I'm going to watch it. So it's just ridiculous to say that those people must be neo-Nazi supporters because they didn't turn around and leave. Nobody would have left. Literally nobody would have left that situation unless they felt in danger. If they felt personally in danger, they would, of course. All right. That's all I got for now. I'm going to talk to you later.